Hi, I'm Joanna, and I'm going to show you how to hand sew some English paper pieces together today. This is what our end result is going to look like. I'm going to take 2 of these green pieces that I have, and I'm going to put them right sides together. And I'm going to use a little binding clip just because I have it right here. Whenever I start sewing, I'm going to push my needle through just the very edge of both pieces of fabric, and I'm making sure I'm not sewing through the paper. So if there's a whole lot of resistance, that probably means that you're sewing through the paper and you need to back off on the stitch a little bit and just grab slightly less. So you're just getting the 2 pieces of fabric. I don't knot the end of my thread whenever I start sewing, but I'm just going to make a couple of stitches in place to secure that tail. Do one more. Now I'm just going to do a whip stitch to sew these pieces together. And I'm making sure that I'm just grabbing the 2 fabrics and not the paper. Okay, and so now I'm going to be cutting my thread, so I'm going to do a couple stitches in place and then I'm going to make a knot. Just like that. Use my thread snips, open those out. And so you can see my stitches are not very visible because I'm using this cream colored thread that blends in really well with all the fabrics I'm using in this project. And so now the next piece I'm going to sew is going to go right here. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to fold it right sides together with this piece. I'll sew down this seam, and then I will rotate and adjust the fabric, and then I'll sew this last seam, and I'll show you how to do that. So again, whenever I start, I'm going to sew a couple of stitches in the corner to secure the tail of my thread. So now that I've gotten that sewed, I'm going to open this piece up, and now I'm going to fold this piece in half so that it's kind of pinched, so that now I can sew this last seam. And I know that before I didn't talk about thimbles. I've tried every thimble that I know of. I'm not a thimble person. I haven't found any success, so I have a really big callus on my thumb from stabbing myself so many times. I have found some little stickers that I like, so they're kind of like stick-on thimbles, but I go through them so fast that I decided that I'd just be better off stabbing myself. I guess. Whatever. Anyways. Okay, so I'm finished sewing this seam, and I'm going to do a double stitch at the end just to secure. I always like to secure the outer points of the seams that I'm sewing. Okay, so now we're going to open this piece out, and you can see that I've kind of got the foundation for my triangle piece over here. And so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this piece that I basted previously. I don't like to break my thread if I don't have to. I like to sew continually so that I have the fewest amount of knots possible. So I'm going to just stick my needle in this side over here, and I'm going to take this elongated triangle piece, and I'm going to put the point exactly centered right here on this piece. And I'm going to use my binding clip to secure the outer portion of that. And so what I'm going to do is my thread is already in the center, so I'm just going to start sewing this. And I'm going to do a double stitch again, kind of to secure my starting point. And I'm making sure that I'm grabbing both pieces of fabric for every stitch that I make. And I would say that I probably do, I don't know, 10 to 12 stitches per inch, probably around 10. And whenever you're first starting out English paper piecing, You might find that your stitches aren't quite as consistent. They may be not spaced evenly, but with a little practice and the more that you do it, the more consistent you'll get. So you can see that here I can't see my fabric. I'm going to fold this seam allowance back. And now I'm just going to hold it with my hand because that's a habit that I've gotten into with this. I've sewn so many of this one pattern. I've got my little system down, as I'm sure you do whenever you're sewing your English paper piecing projects. Okay, so I'm going to open this up. I'm going to stick my needle back in here and I'm going to grab another one of these pieces. And I'm going to place it exactly the same way that I did before, with the kind of the point of the triangle centered in the valley of these two pieces where they meet. And I'm going to secure it with my binding clip. I'm going to pull this little seam allowance back along with this one. I'm making sure that I'm starting out here at the outer point of these two pieces. Once I get to the middle of my triangle, I'm going to need to kind of manipulate these pieces so that I can match the other two sides to sew together. Okay, so I'm putting my last stitch in that side. And so now I'm going to match these two sides. And so I'll need to kind of pinch and fold to match these up. And then I'll sew down this side. Okay, and so I'm going to need to rethread my needle because I'm just about out of thread. So I'm going to stop by doing a couple stitches in place and just doing a quick knot. And then I'll trim that thread off. Get some more thread. Another good thing about thread gloss is you can gloss up the end of your thread and it helps you thread your needle more easily. Just like that. And then I'm going to run it through my thread gloss a couple times because I like the smell and it'll help keep knots away. Okay, so now to get started, like I said, I don't tie a knot whenever I start my thread, but I am going to stitch in place a couple of stitches to make sure that I secure that thread tail. It's totally fine if you want to make a knot to make sure that yours is secure. I don't do it because it takes too much time and I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to that. Okay, so now I'll take my last elongated triangle piece and I'm going to line it up with the center again. Put a little binding clip there. Pull the seam allowances out of the way on those previous pieces and start stitching my last piece down. Now I'm going to fold this last piece over. Okay, and so now we're going to finish up this last piece, the last half of this piece that we started. And so I'm folding this over and clipping it with a binding clip so that these two pieces are flush together. And then I'm just going to sew this last seam up and be done with this piece. All right, and I'm back at the center, so I'm just going to do a couple stitches in place and then I'll make my knot. And I'm ready to cut my thread. For this project, there are some other pieces that also go with this. It's not just made up of these little triangles. But once I get done sewing all of these together, then I'll just peel these papers out. So I'll lightly just pull the fabric away And you can see there's not hardly any glue residue on this, on the fabric. So we'll just pull this away and then pop the papers out. And so if you've done a good job of not sewing through the paper, they should pop right out without much resistance. Generally, I'll find that a couple times I will have sewed through the paper even when I thought I didn't. But usually if you tug it just a little bit, they'll come out. That's my 2 cents on English paper piecing, and I hope you'll try a couple of different methods. You know, like I talked about at first, a lot of the things that I tried starting out didn't work for me. And even though it was a little bit discouraging at first, after I tried some other things, I found out that that worked even better for me, and I really enjoyed the hand sewing aspect of it.